That is LCD Sound System from This Is Happening. It's Dance Yourself Clean, Avalon Emerson, right before that from a brand new record, Avalon Emerson and the Charm, a song called Dreamliner. Roosevelt, upcoming full length from the German producer, played the track Ordinary Love. Alpha Miss from the new record Variables. 4th Feb, Stay Awake, the name of the song. Now, Alpha Miss saying of the record, I've been focused on who I am in my music, but now I'm exploring where I am. I'm asking, how did I get here? I think David Byrne asked that as well. Tribe Called Quest with Check the Rhyme from the Low End Theory. That one came out in 1991, the year we're celebrating this week. Today's the last day of celebrating the year 91 and our 50 years of hip-hop birthday celebration. Tomorrow we'll flip the calendar over to 2017 and started off the set with Sinead O'Connor from Faith and Courage, an album that came out on this day in the year 2000, the song No Man's Woman. Here on Drive Time, Kevin Cole with you, along with Mina and Sam. We appreciate you tuning in today on National Dance Therapy Day. That's what the LCD Sound System was for, Dance Yourself Clean. So National Dance Therapy Day addresses mental health by honing in on the body, movement, and dance as a natural expression that aids physical and psychological healing. You know when you dance, you always feel better when you dance. So a lot of good music to dance to throughout the show, always on Drive Time. Now today also happens to be National Weed Your Garden Day. Day to head out in the garden, pull out those pesky weeds, a little motivation for you to do that. Now, I think the 2 days should be combined. So, hoping you run out to the garden, listening to Drive Time, do some gardening, pull the weeds, but do it while you're dancing. So you're going to celebrate both. You're going to feel good getting the weeds up, you're going to feel good dancing, and then you can dance yourself clean. Well, you'll have to clean up after you weed. So right now, in honor of National Weed Your Garden Day, a couple tracks here. We're going to start out with a track that Will, listening in Canton, New York, requested. It's Courtney Barnett with Avant Gardener, National Weed Your Garden Day. It's Drive Time, KEXP.
seem to stand on my own 2 feet. I'm breathing but I'm wheezing, feel like I'm emphyseming. My throat feels like a funnel filled with Weet-Bix and kerosene. And oh no, next thing I know they call up AAA. I'd rather die than owe the hospital till I get old. I get adrenaline straight to the heart. I feel like Uma Thurman post-overdose and kickstart. Reminds me of the time when I was really sick and I had too much pseudoephedrine and I couldn't sleep at night. Halfway down High Street, Andy looks ambivalent. He's probably wondering what I'm doing getting in an ambulance. The paramedic thinks I'm clever cause I play guitar. I think she's clever cause she stops people dying. Anaphylactic and super hypochondriactic. Should've stayed in bed today. I much prefer the mundane. I take a hit from an asthma puffer. I do it wrong. I was never good at smoking bones. I'm not that good at breathing in. I'm not that good at breathing in. I'm not that good at breathing in. Hey, this is Courtney Barnett, and you're listening to Drive Time with Kevin Cole on 90.3 FM KEXP Seattle.
The milk is sour. I've barely been to college, and I've been doubtful of all that I've dreamed of. The brink of my existence essentially is a comedy. The gap in my teeth, and all that I can cling to. The milk is sour. Shalala, shalala. Shalala, the milk is sour with olives on my thumbs, and all that I've stuck to and all that I've clung to. I fought like a dog. This world that I've trusted has been over and busted and rested by an arbitrary sonogram. Shalala, 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 shalala. Sour with olives on my thumbs, and I've been doubtful of all that I have dreamed of. The brink of my existence essentially is a comedy. The gap in my teeth, and all that I can cling to. The milk is sour. Shalala, 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 shalala. Shalala, shalala. If you don't go outside, well, nothing's gonna happen. She'll never write her number on a crumpled up napkin. She'll never be your ego, she'll never be your bandit. She'll never get to eat you like your heart's a pomegranate. I'm throwing out the milk, the olives got old. I'm tired of my mind getting heavy with mold. I need to start a garden, I need to start a garden, I need to start a garden, I need to start a garden. Gonna start a garden in my backyard. I'm gonna start a garden in my backyard. 'Cause making this song up is just as hard. 'Cause making this song up is just as hard. Ooh, sha-la-la, ooh, ooh, sha-la-la, 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 sha-la.
I got you arrested because you've already come and gone.
Candidates, please take to the stage. D3 candidates, please take to the stage. Who are we missing? Alex? All right. Who are we missing?
I'll just grab some just in case.
I'll just sit in the middle.
And you just absolutely. We're just gonna wipe them. What should we use to wipe her? Just for their.
You made it.
But are they gonna be passing them to you? No, we'll pass them to the coordinator, and then
Glad you made
the
it.
moderator will have one microphone, and then we'll just use the other microphone. You got Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I got it. That's gonna be mine when you're done.
Okay.
The whole thing.
I'll go
Okay.
over on this side then. Here, I'll go over here then.
Wipe it. Did you pass it? You can. It's up to you. Oh, I'm here to help wipe. Yes, I'm a volunteer. I'm here to wipe. No, you're fine. I just don't.
Okay. Sophia.
I'll do some free wiping.
All right. Welcome everybody to the D3 Candidate Forum brought to you by the 43rd District Democrats, the 37th District Democrats, and Tech for Housing. We are moderated tonight by Erica Barnett, a longtime Seattle journalist and editor and co-founder of Publicola. We are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, with multiple backups thanks to Tech for Housing. Couple of things, democracy vouchers. I'm sure these candidates are going to be asking you for democracy vouchers. If you've come prepared, be ready to sign those. We've also been handing out question cards. So if you have a question, write your question down. We'll pick that up later on. And with that, I'll turn it over to Erica to kick us off.
Wow, that was incredibly efficient. Thank you. So I'm Erica Barnett, as you said, Paul, founder and editor of Publicola, and I really like to keep the intros efficient and short. So we're going to give everybody 1 minute just to do with as you wish. Introduce yourself, say why you're running. Anything you want to say, as long as it is 1 minute or less. And we're going to start, let's start on this side. And I will, as we go through questions, I'm going to rotate so nobody's on the hot seat every single time. But for now, we're just going to start traditional left to right.
Okay. Hi there. My name is Bobby Goodwin, and I'm a resident of District 3 for the last 15 years. I'm a public defender, and that's the work that I've been doing for the last 12 years. I do that down in Tacoma. I'm running because I've been frustrated with the way local government has been responding to just the events of the present day. Really, I think it all started at the time of the CHOP. I think our local government showed a lack of leadership, and since then things have just been on a downward trajectory. The increase of property crime and graffiti and just a lot of stuff that has left me feeling really unsatisfied. And so I want to be a part of the change.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Ashofu. I am also running in this race. It's an exciting time. I am coming from a lived experience of being unhoused, while being diagnosed with AIDS. And so I had to navigate systems and bureaucracy that were not created by people like me. And I think that's what pushed me to do the fight I do. I'm a very strong LGBTQ advocate and rights fighter. Immigrants' rights is also something big in my portfolio. And also health work. I'm currently a clinical program manager, and I am running to bring humanity back to policy and bring experiences from a lived experience back to our political landscape here in Seattle. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Alex Cooley. I also am running in this race, not a surprise. And like many of these people up here, I deeply love this city. And I believe that our city is at a turning point. We don't have leadership that we can trust. We don't have faith that our electeds will actually act in our best interests because we've been played with indecisiveness, inflexibility, and special interest money. I decided to run the day my son was born because I need him to grow up in a city that he absolutely deserves, just like every other person in this city absolutely deserves. I've learned this as a community member, community leader, a public servant, an entrepreneur, a substitute teacher, many other things. But most importantly, it's because I want to be of service. I want to be of service to the city, and I want to be of service to the 105,000 residents that we have tackling these very, very important issues. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shobit Agarwal. I'm in this race because I know I want to build a more prosperous and equitable Seattle. I want to prioritize green infrastructure, both sound transit with a lot of last mile loop buses, as well as work with Seattle City Light so we improve the electric infrastructure so that we can have more electric cars all across as they become more affordable and pervasive. I want the green energy will provide the next massive business surge in Seattle. And I want to support all small businesses, especially those owned by women, people of color, and sexual minorities. I want to make housing more affordable by dezoning I-135 and providing or restricting people from non-resident investors from investing in Seattle. I support reproductive rights, LGBTQIA rights, and workers' rights. I want to make sure that we streamline the process and resolve local constituent concerns like potholes, graffiti. Thank you.
All right, and I just want to point out for anybody, I didn't mention this first, so there is a timer right over here. Paul is going to be timing, and so when it's 15 seconds, you'll see the yellow sign, and when it's time's up, you'll see the orange hush sign.
Oh, thank you, Shobit. Oh, do you want me to go this side? Yeah, hand that back to Shobit. Okay. Sorry.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Joy Hollingsworth, running for District 3, as well as all of the 8 wonderful candidates up here. Born and raised in the Central District of Seattle, third generation Seattleite. My mother worked at King County Housing Authority, my dad, Seattle Parks Department, and my grandmother worked on the school board during very turbulent times here in the city of Seattle. I have a background in nonprofit work at a food distribution program where we partner with 400 different food banks all across the state of Washington. I'm an entrepreneur, small business owner. I'm also have a background with engaging and connecting with youth. And so our platform, real simple, Public safety is huge for us. Community safety. The second piece is housing stability. I live in the same house my grandmother purchased for in 1947 for $5,000. We converted it into a triplex. The third thing we're running on, essential government services, making sure we prioritize essential government services for our city of Seattle. Thank you.
I'm Alex Hudson, and I have been a champion and a leader in our district and in Seattle and across the state of Washington on mobility, housing, and economic and social justice issues for well over a decade. I live in First Hill, where I'm raising my family. I have an 8th grader in the public school system. I'm a cancer survivor, and folks in the 43rd are already benefiting from the fruits of the work that I've done, including building hundreds of units of affordable housing, helping to build multimodal bike lanes, helping to make public transit free for every single one of our young people in the state of Washington, housing, providing housing for homeless folks and beyond. And so I am a progressive leader with a long track record of proven results delivering for our community, and I'm excited about the opportunity to build more housing, take care of people, and build more livable, walkable communities in our beautiful district.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Rye Armstrong. I want to thank the 37th, the 43rd, and Tech for Housing for having us tonight. And give them a round of applause. Thank you. You're going to hear a lot of lists tonight of things people want to do. I just want to explain that I am just a normal person, born and raised in Seattle, who is tired of seeing the same stuff plague our city. I am a proud democratic socialist, and I am pragmatic in the way that I want to still support things like rent control, Green New Deal, and universal shelter, and to take care of our houseless neighbors. Seattle has a special place in my heart. My grandfather worked at Booth Fisheries downtown in the Teamsters Union for 50 years and passed away last year due to COVID-related illness. And so I felt like it was a need for me to really step up in our community and bring something different to the table that will have some innovative results and not the same solutions we've been trying over and over again. So thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name's Efren. I'm running because the status quo is not enough. Everything over the last 3 years has told us that there's no going back to the way things were before. This is a time of change. History is being made right now. 4, 5 new faces coming to council. I'm running because I want to be part of these conversations. I'm running because I believe in a Seattle that is more walkable, more vibrant, more climate resilient. You can learn more about that vision on my website, electefren.com. A little bit of a little call out to myself. I did not bring lit tonight. I just came from another event, but check out the website. I'll also be hanging around for questions afterwards. Thanks for being here.
All right, so we are going to start with some quick, very, very lightning round questions as kind of a warm-up. And these are not yes/no questions, so you don't have to get out your cards yet. But one sentence or less. How did you get to this event today? And we'll start with Bobby.
I drove.
I used a mixture of public transit and Uber.
Drove a Prius.
I walked and then took the 8 number bus.
I rode my bicycle. Did that?
I took my Razor scooter and then also took the 8 from Capitol Hill.
I rode my bicycle.
I drove.
All right, and I'll just admit that I drove as well. Okay, so what is your favorite bus line in Seattle? We'll start with Andrew.
I would say is the I took the 132 for the first time, and why I like it is it takes you to see the other aspects of Seattle that is rarely explored by public transit.
Let's go straight down to Alex and back around.
Number 7, very walkable for me, gets me to a lot of places, connects me to a lot of others.
When I came to Seattle, it was 5:45 because it took me to Redmond. Now it is 11 because it takes me down to Westlake Center.
Just for ease, let's just use, yeah.
I used to ride the 48 as a little kid. I don't think that bus is operating anymore. 48, thank you, Pete. But the 10, because I'd like to do the light rail from my house on 23rd and John all the way to the Capitol Hill light rail station.
I am a Route 2 rider, but I love the Route 60. It's a great crosstown bus that takes me to McPherson's to buy delicious, affordable produce.
We love the two. My favorite is probably 522 because my parents are up in Kenmore, and that's how I go home and visit them.
My favorite is number 12 because sometimes I'm lazy and it stops right in front of where I live.
And maybe pass that back on down as I remind or let folks know that there are. Oh, I'm so sorry, Bobby. Feel free to just yell. I can hear you. Cut me off when I go astray.
590, 594 gets me to work.
Awesome. There are index cards that will be going around. There they are in the back. Anybody who wants to ask a question, go ahead and start thinking about that. No, this is not a live question event, so. All right, so we'll take questions on index cards, and I'll ask them at the end of the event. So go ahead and grab one. I don't know if anybody's going around, but think about your question, and we will continue with the next question. And this will start with Alex. Alex Cooley. Okay. The guy in the KEXP shirt. What is the last live music performance that by a local artist that you attended in Seattle?
That would have been the I-135 promo concert at Numos. Quite a few local artists right in the hill.
Okay. Just bring it down this way.
I was at the volunteer park at the Pride event. I don't remember the artist, but there were a lot of, local artists playing there.
Yeah, I was just at Nectar watching a phenomenal artist named Shamel Simmons. You got to go on her thing. She's a great artist, lyricist, and rap artist.
My partner and I went to Jazz Alley to see some live music just a couple of weeks ago.
I love Jazz Alley. I went to Volunteer Park and saw King Youngblood. I think it was last weekend. Time's a construct and it starts blending. But yeah, we love the new amphitheater at Volunteer Park.
Really had to dig back on this one. It was about 6 months ago, and it was Touche Amore, which I don't know how local they are, but it's a grunge band.
Maybe we should start like a rotation or something.
So it was volunteer park Pride, but I'm really going to go to a live concert by the Mattress Man, if you know who that is.
Yeah, I was at Volunteer Park on Saturday, and to be honest, it wasn't really my jam, so I wasn't paying attention to the names.
All right. If your campaign had a theme song, what would it be? And we'll start with Shobin.
Apart from the Titanic song, maybe like a version.
Two songs, because I got to have two. I love music. Optimistic by Sounds of Blackness, and then All Things by Kirk Franklin.
Don't Stop Me Now by Queen.
Girls just want to have fun.
I was going to say Bicycle, but the Final Countdown, because everything feels like it's a final countdown.
Can you bring that mic? Don, maybe you could we could start like kind of a rotation kind of deal.
My wonderful wife has decided it is Where's the Love by Black Eyed Peas.
So I have to go down to my Nigerian roots, and I don't know if anyone knows Burna Boy. So Last by Burna Boy.
Shit Luck by Modest Mouse.
All right, some funny ones and some grim ones. So next question, is your household income above or below 100% of the area median income? And we'll start with Joy and go down this way. So here, I'll let you use this mic.
Do you want me to use that one? So you want me to pull it? Oh. Sorry.
Oh, wait, here it comes.
It's above. Do you want us to tell us what it is, or just say above?
No. Just above or below. You don't have to say an amount.
It's below.
Below. Efren, are you rich?
No, below.
I'm like really close. I forget what the number is right now. What's the area?
That's not
That's part of the trip.
I'm asking you the
Shit.
questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Below.
Above.
Below.
All right. And then the last in this lightning round is, do you own or rent the home that you live in? We'll start with Alex Hudson.
I rent. I've been a renter my whole life.
I just bought a condo with a first-time homebuyer grant. We love it.
I was able to buy a condo with the assistance of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Let's go back to Bobby, and we'll go around.
Own a townhouse.
Rent.
Very fortunate to own the first home we bought under the assisted buyer program.
We own a condo.
I got you. I'm a renter in my grandmother's home that my parents, that was passed down after she passed away.
All right, so now we're going to dive into some more questions, and we're going to get our first yes/no lightning round. And this, you may notice that you do not have a waffle sign, so please indicate whatever is closer to your position, and try not to do the sideways thing where you don't really commit to an answer. Okay, number one. 100 years ago, Seattle's land use laws permitted any kind of home up to 3 stories in all residential neighborhoods. Seattle created its first single-family zone in 1923 to get around a Supreme Court decision banning cities from explicitly segregating neighborhoods by race. Do you support rolling back these exclusionary decisions and legalizing any type of 3-story building in all residential neighborhoods? Okay, and everybody is saying yes, they do, I believe. Yep. Do you support the elimination of all minimum parking requirements throughout the city in our next comprehensive plan? Remember, these are legally binding forever. Okay, everybody says yes. Seattle has allocated space for roughly 500,000 privately owned cars to be stored in the public right-of-way. Would you support the transformation of 100,000 on-street parking spots into street trees to increase the size of our tree canopy? All right, I'm seeing Bobby says no, and Joy says no, and everybody else says yes. I'm a maybe, but no waffling. Okay, so here is our first longer question, and it's about the comprehensive plan. What is your vision? And we'll have 1 minute. Let me check my time here. Yeah, we'll start with 1 minute, and I may be able to make these a little longer as we go, depending on how well everybody keeps to the time. What is your vision for Seattle's comprehensive plan? And I don't remember who went first last time. I think Alex Hudson is up first. What is your vision for the Seattle comprehensive plan, which is up for renewal, I believe, next year?
Yeah, Alternative 5 doesn't go far enough. We need to be supporting Alternative 6. We need to have density and zoning everywhere. We need to have a plan that points us in the direction of a city for the future. I believe that no one should need a car to get a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk, and we need to have walkable neighborhoods that are rich with opportunities, services, and public infrastructure and investments in every corner of our city. So I believe that the goal of our comprehensive plan should be to point us in the right direction of walkable, thriving, equitable communities where everyone can get what they need without the use of a private vehicle.
I second that a little bit. I would want to go further. I like the idea of incorporating more of alternative plan number 4 to maybe make even a 7. Ooh, crazy. I just think we can't have the same business as usual approach to these things, especially with climate change in the next 40 to 50 years. Even 120,000 units of housing may not be enough with northern migration. So for me, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so this feels insane to me that we don't even have an actual alternative 6 plan on the table. and it feels reprehensible to me. So I wouldn't be able to support any of the current plans as they stand, and would force the city to look further.
Yeah, I would agree. My understanding is that 200,000 units of housing in the next 10 years is what's required to keep pace with anticipated growth in this region. Anything less, and we are setting ourselves up to fail. House Bill 1110 is going to do a lot for our city, but it doesn't go far enough. It leaves out some of the wealthiest neighborhoods to basically foist the responsibility of assuming more growth to the rest of the city, and that's not okay. So my answer to your question is we need to go beyond what all of the alternatives are proposing, because less than 200,000 units will set us up to fail.
Oh, okay. And, I think there's wide agreement here that option 6 needs to be under consideration. In terms of our climate goals, right, we need to make sure that we're being mindful of intentional transit so that we're having less need for vehicles, for everything. I mean, we don't want people to have to be commuting downtown from cities across the way. We want folks to be living where they work. Those are really important goals. And so that's the direction I want us to be moving in. This urban village model has not been very effective in terms of encouraging the necessary development and keeping pace. So that's something I definitely think that needs to be retooled as we go forward.
Yeah, thanks. I think that we need to do more, but we also need to ensure that in implementing the comp plan, we have to put equity as a focal point. And I say this because I want us to do more. We need 15-minute walkable city, but that also means investing in areas where we don't have the necessity in amenities, from the expense of opening small businesses for minorities, and also the impact of the damage that the climate damage, that has been done in what we have currently. So we need to mitigate climate change effects. We also need to build more affordable, accessible, and available housing units for all in such a way that what they need is right there for them. Thank you.
Echoing the same sentiments, we have to put forward better alternatives. We have to make sure that we're not only building this housing, but we're building it in an equitable fashion and in an environmentally responsible fashion. So that's anti-displacement strategies, that's retention strategies, that's green building strategies. Those have to be part of the comp plan, along with upzoning, not just from a residential perspective, but also from a neighborhood commercial perspective. We want these 15-minute walkable cities. Well, that also means we have to change zoning in regards to what we can have within these neighborhoods. That's fundamental. Last but not least, we have to look at mobility from every single level, as opposed to each level of mobility as a separate level. Transit, biking, walking, all that has to be part of one comprehensive strategy of safe and equitable mobility within our city. Thank you.
I have seen projections of 1 million people coming into Seattle in the next 15 years. That means we need 400,000 to 600,000 housing, assuming 2.5 to or 2.4 household per people in a household. That means just in Seattle proper, we need half of that. That's more than 200,000 housing, as a friend was saying. We need to de-zone much higher. We need to build taller buildings, which have parking in them, and we want to make them, when they're denser areas, that we can support them with a public transit. We have to expand sound transit massively and provide last mile loops along with the bike lanes and walking lanes, so people can travel to their grocery stores without having to drive. Thank you.
Yeah. 3 things. So you think about climate, housing, and transit. I'm also thinking about I'm also thinking about in District 3, about our transit between districts, right? So I know we're all running for District 3, but if you think about District 2, how undeveloped it's been significantly. A lot of my friends have been gentrified out, and they're now in D2. There's only one food bank in the 98118 zip code. You only have a couple buses running, empty bus lanes constantly. We need to ramp up transit in the South End for buses and operational. And so when I'm thinking about, like, as we're gearing towards the future, we also have to make sure that the communities that have been here long called Seattle home, that they're protected as well, and they can be integrated into like the new vision of Seattle as well. Thank you.
This one's for us, I think.
Good. Great. Alex, you want to just grab the mic from Ryan?
I think she spoke.
Oh, you spoke. Sorry. It's a lot of people up here, and it's hot, you guys. Okay, so now we're going to, actually, real quickly, I want to ask a question, just a lightning round question, and then we're going to jump into another lightning round of yes, no. So we'll start with this one. Do you support lidding I-5? Yeah, see, everybody always says yes to this, but it never seems to happen. All right, so now these are going to be about housing subsidies. Do you support the renewal of the housing levy, which will raise about $1 billion over the next 7 years? Okay, all right, everybody is saying yes. Did you vote to approve I-135, the Seattle social housing developer, earlier this year? Okay, I believe everybody's saying yes. Half of Vienna's residents live in social housing, a program that's funded there by a 1% payroll tax. Do you support a 1% payroll tax over and above the existing Jumpstart tax to fund the social housing developer? All right, these are commitments, everybody. And finally, will you prioritize the use of surplus city-owned land for social housing? All right, and everybody is saying yes to that. Okay, next, slightly longer question. Now that social housing has passed in Seattle, what specific policies will you champion in the budget, in the law, and with the public to ensure that social housing is a success? And we'll start with Rye.
Thanks. I was
You
proud
all
to
have 1 minute. I'm so sorry. 1 minute each.
1 minute, got it. Starting now. I was proud to endorse I-135. I think we need massive rent control in this city, starting with rent stabilization and working towards rent control. I think we also need a baseline of universal shelter to catch people who do fall into houselessness or who are in need of shelter space. We do not have enough space for our unhoused neighbors, so I would want to pass a right to shelter provision legally within our city municipal code to allow for universal shelter. Beyond that, I want to look at doing a vacancy tax on both residential and commercial spaces where we can then fund I-135, the new social housing PDA. So those are my ideas. You can read more on our website at rye4seattle.com/policy. Thanks.
Well, I think it starts with funding it. And Rye, you took the words out of my mouth. Identifying progressive revenue streams like a vacancy tax, like a land banking tax, capital gains tax, and a payroll tax. It starts with funding the program if we want this thing to be successful. I believe they've only secured about 18 months of initial operating costs or funding for the first 18 months. So in my mind, it starts with funding them permanently with their own revenue streams.
The mic down. There we go. Yep.
You've already heard the most obvious parts of this equation, right? And that's what they're looking to do right now, secure that funding source. You know, it's going to take a while for this to happen, and we have to be sure that it's done effectively, efficiently, because there are plenty of taxpayers that feel like the city is being irresponsible with their tax dollars, right? There was a recent a report came out. They said we were like rated 128th out of 150 major cities in terms of what the city Seattle taxpayers are getting for how much they pay, and so that's something that. I'm mindful of, right? We have to be thoughtful as we go forward here, or else you're going to lose out, and it'll just be a bunch of administrative costs for the sake of nothing. So, being clever about these sources, a lot of us agree about those ideas. I will just add one additional source that I've talked about, which is I think that we have to look at short-term rentals and make efforts to clamp down on those, and I think that could be an additional source.
Thank you. So everyone has talked about funding, and I do agree we need progressive revenue from capital gains tax to vacancy tax. Well, let's talk about the implementation. I would want to push for a status neutral approach to implementation. And status neutral is a low barrier form of housing. People talk about social housing, but they don't talk about the punitive nature of our current social housing, which limits what residents can do or what they should do. So we should implement what Finland did, a housing first method to our social housing, ensuring that if we're taking people from being unhoused, we don't give them things like, oh, you need to have a clean drug test, you need to do this, you need to do that. Let's bring them in, and then let's work with them to be whole again. So that's a bill we should pass. Thank you.
So in addition to what others have said of standing up I-135 with vacancy taxes, progressive taxes, additional progressive tax that we need to put forward, similar to what Los Angeles has done, is applying a high value real estate tax on any homes that are sold over 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, different brackets for it of percentage of tax. That'll give us about $11 million a year. Two major parts that I think are fundamental, one a little more pie in the sky, but I'm committed to it for social housing, is lidding I-5. Lidding I-5 gives us a massive amount of land that we can put social housing on. Number two, the devil in the details. We have to fix Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. It takes 3 years to build anything, whether it's social housing or housing for the rich. So we have to fix the code along with fixing our zoning so that we can build these proper spaces that we all need in an efficient manner. Because right now, SDCI
All right,
blocks
that's
us from doing that. Thank you.
We need to do three things. Number one, we need to have differential property taxes, both on the value of the property, the vacancy rate, and the residency rate. If you are not living in Seattle and just parking your money here, and you live in East Europe, Russia, whatever, you should be paying more tax. I've raised this to Representative Chop. The only problem is that there is a state constitutional amendment that we cannot do this. So we need an amendment required to change that policy so we can have differential property taxes. Number two is faster permits. Number three is we need to keep the confidence of the people in this process, which means we need to make sure we are auditing it, making sure and convincing people that every dollar we are spending on this process is being used effectively and efficiently. Thank you.
Proudly supported I-135. Thinking about capital gains tax, just like everyone said up here, would definitely support that. Also thinking about ways in which it's a proof model concept, right? And so thinking about how we're implementing the program, how we're making it successful, right? Who's getting into social housing as well. Like just making sure that it's run very efficiently and well, because after that you can build on that to continue to expand. Also thinking about when we're talking about more housing, thinking about triplexes, duplexes, ADUs. We converted our house into a triplex back in 2000 when the neighborhood became really unaffordable. And the problem that we had with City of Seattle, it took a long time for permitting. And we've done that. It's really difficult. We can't expect our city to be able to develop really significantly if our permitting process is really broken up. Thank you.
Yeah, housing is a human right, not a commodity. And so the pathway towards social housing is the kind of long-term structural reform that we need to make sure that everybody has a place where they can afford to live and that no one sleeps on the streets in our city. And so in addition to the progressive revenue streams, which we go into supporting the social housing developer, I'm on the board of a nonprofit affordable housing provider, so I'm very familiar with how we put together capital stacks to deliver housing. So we need more money, we need regulatory form, and we need to be able to use the city's bonding capacity to create the largest source of funding possible in order to create that pipeline of acquiring existing buildings, using our municipal land to site these additional buildings, and then supporting it along the way to create the virtuous cycle so that people can have housing stability and that we can have thriving, equitable communities.
All right, here we're going to go, and just a reminder, if you have questions, it's not too late. There are index cards available to ask your questions on, and I'll be asking those at the end of the event. So now we're going to have another lightning round, yes, no. on, and this is going to be on homelessness and housing stability. There's mounting evidence demonstrating the link between sweeps of homeless encampments and increased death, overdose, and hospitalization, especially in the winter when survival is more challenging. Since 2018, Seattle's winter eviction ban ensures that people are safely housed through the harsh weather. As a candidate, do you support a winter sweep ban in line with the eviction ban? All right, I see everybody saying yes, I believe, except Joy says yes also. I saw it from the back, so sorry. Everybody says yes. All right, all right. I will point out there are winter sweeps now, so this would be a pretty big change in policy. While Seattle conducted more than 900 sweeps in 2022, a record 310 unhoused people died in King County. Will you commit to replacing sweeps with policies that allow people to shelter in place so that they can stay connected with caseworkers and access housing? All right, I'm seeing all yeses except for Bobby says no. Should Seattle increase the funding it contributes to the King County Regional Homelessness Authority? Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of yeses. And now this is a long question. I'm maybe give a little leeway on the timing of a minute or so, if that's okay, Paul. Because it's a complex one. What is the root cause of homelessness in Seattle? We'll start with Efren.
Not enough homes. Sorry, it threw me off. Not enough homes. We are living in a world, as Alex was saying earlier, where housing is treated as a commodity and not as a right. And that, in addition to a shortage, means that we have a city that is being reduced down to a single workforce. I, as an attorney, spend 50% of my income on a 600 square foot unit. 50% of my income. This is turning into a one-trick pony show kind of town, and I think the root cause is the lack of housing.
Yeah, I think there's no question that the supply has a tremendous role. It's not the only factor. I mean, I think this question, the framing of it feels like a loaded question. Again, I've been a public defender for 12 years, and I've had plenty of clients that were homeless not because there wasn't an opportunity, but because they weren't well. And sometimes that meant because they weren't tending to their mental health, they were refusing to take medication, maybe because they didn't have the insight to recognize they needed it. Maybe it's because they were, again, it could have in fact been the addiction issue. I mean, that is a true and real part of this problem as well. I mean, I've had many clients that could have gone home if they would have stayed sober. But the family refused to have them around if they wouldn't. And people make the choice sometimes to be in in this other environment.
So I've been unhoused, I've been homeless, but I want to make something very clear on this stage right now. Drugs and mental health is not the root cause of being unhoused. It's an escapism and a copism. It's really very damaging to the solution when we think it's drugs and mental health. We talk about being unhoused. We could build 5 million units. If it's not affordable, if it's not accessible, if it's not available to the people that need it the most, is it really the solution? We need to also think about the barriers. In healthcare, we have what we call low barrier access to care. As I stated earlier on, status neutral approach to care. A status neutral approach to housing ensures that no matter who you are, no matter how you look, no matter what you earn, you have a place. This has been proven to work in Finland. And this is something very personal to me. I knock on doors, but one thing I also do is to knock on tents. On Howell and 16, there is the Sound Mental Health Care, and there's a encampment there. But I knock and talk to those. Pete has to come early and sleep in a camp to meet his court-ordered treatment the next day in the morning because of poor transit system. So it's multifaceted. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. first and foremost, homelessness is a housing problem. There's a great book on it. I suggest everyone read it. When people become unhoused, we're not doing a good job to help scaffold them out of that situation. Our drug policy is a very large part of that. That's why I'm proposing full legalization and regulation of taxation of drugs, so we can have appropriate services to help people who are dealing with the trauma of being homeless, which is causing drug addiction, mental health issues. We have to build adequate support systems and scaffolding systems. It's multifaceted, but first and foremost, it starts with housing. We have to build more affordable, accessible, and available housing.
So that the issue changes based on age. I believe that for youth homelessness, it is because either they are being thrown away from their home because they are LGBTQIA, or they are aging out of the foster system. I want to keep supporting and even provide more support to organizations like Lambert House to take those youth off the street, provide them shelter, provide them housing, provide them training so that they can rebuild their life. For adults and old age, you guys are all correct. It's all housing. When in mental health issues and substance health issues happen, because if you're sleeping night after night on streets, not sure if you will survive the night, not sure if you'll keep the clothes on the back, if you shoes on your feet, you're gonna have issues. You're gonna use substances to get out of those issues. And that's what causes those issues, not the other way around for the most part. So if we get them off the street, provide them stable housing for a long term, they can rebuild their life. I met James. He is a barber in Rudy Shop on 15th Avenue. He told me that he was unhomed when he was a youth in New York. He got out, somebody put him in a home, and he was able to go to school, and he's now one of their best barbers there. We need to get people off the street, and then they can rebuild their life. Thank you.
Yeah, first thing is get everyone off the street and inside. It's a housing problem, but we also have a really big shelter problem. King County sheltered over 2,500 people, built 2,500 shelter beds. City of Seattle, 300. That's a problem. And so what we're seeing on the streets right now, and I want to go, I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's a drug problem. It's not. If you're unhoused and you're on the street, sometimes you cope with stuff, or you take substances to be able to stay up so people aren't robbing your stuff, or making sure that you're staying awake or feeling safe, all these different things. So we have to build more shelter. The first thing is bringing people inside. The second thing is we have to build more day shelters. Day shelters where people can get connected to resources, they can do their laundry, sanitize, restrooms, bathrooms, all these different things for people to be able to get connected to resources. We need different pathways in which people, where we have to meet them where they are, where it's an on-ramp for them to get into transitional housing, permanent housing, stable housing, all these different pathways for folks. It can't just be one umbrella to fit all. It has to be different pathways.
Yeah, the cause of our homelessness and unsheltered problem is because of the rapid escalation in the cost of housing and the inability of our city to produce more. And I want to just agree with a lot of what's been said here, but put a finer point on this. Our housing crisis isn't the weather. It didn't just happen to us. It is a policy failure. And a series of policy decisions. And so the solution to our homelessness crisis, which is a moral failing and a humanitarian crisis playing itself out in front of us every day, is the inability of our city to build the kind of density, to build the kind of shelters, to subsidize the kind of housing that makes it so that everybody who wants to has a safe, affordable place where that they can stay in Seattle and that no one sleeps on our streets. There are multiple ways that we can fix this issue, but unless and until we allow for the density, we support the density, we invest in the affordability, we are not going to be able to be a decent society that takes care of people.
Our unhoused neighbors are human beings, and I think there are three things that affect this. First of all, the inequality economically. We are one of the richest cities in this country, And yet we can't tax private jets coming into SeaTac to make sure people have universal shelter. It's insane to me. So that inequality, I think, is the root cause for people being on the streets. Second, I think it's access to resources. Some people have to get SNAP benefits at Pioneer Square, then come up to the free clinic on Capitol Hill or First Hill to get methadone. We're sending these people all over the city just to get the basic needs for shelter in their Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Finally, I think it's the inaction of the current city council. No tea, no shade, Teresa Mosqueda, I see you over there. I think you were great, but the rest of the individual in the council, there's been an inaction. I was a sophomore in college in 2015 when this was declared an emergency for our city. And here we are a decade later, and nothing has seemingly happened. It's gotten worse. So this is my top priority and why I'm running for city council.
All right. So now we're going to switch to public safety and police accountability. And we've got water coming down. Oh, I have some. I'm good.
Anyone else, water? It's free.
All right. So while we work that out, I'm gonna jump into the next lightning round of questions. Should Seattle hire more police officers than the number currently budgeted? Seeing yes.
Wait, currently budgeted or currently the current population right now?
You know, it says currently budgeted. But in the interest of clarity, maybe we'll just say how many there are now. Currently budgeted? Okay. So we've got a bunch of no's. And I think for the audience, and one yes from Bobby, sorry. For the audience, the difference is there's a lot of police officers that are budgeted for, but the positions aren't filled. The next question is, should former Mayor Durkin and former Police Chief Carmen Best be investigated for potential felony destruction of public records for deleting text messages they exchanged on their City of Seattle phones during the June 2020 Black Lives Matter protests? Seeing yeses and a no from Joy. 6 Seattle police officers attended the January 6th insurrection, more than any other city, and 80% voted to elect Mike Solon as their union president. He regularly appears on nationwide Fox News broadcasts and blamed the Black Lives Matter movement for the January 6th insurrection. Does the Seattle Police Department have a culture of white supremacy? All right. Everyone's saying yes to that one. Finally, for this lightning round, do you support dispatching civilian resources to 911 calls that do not require an armed police officer?
It depends. What does it mean?
Do you support deploying civilian resources to 911 calls that don't require an armed officer?
Who decides? Like if it's a priority one?
I'm just reading the questions.
Like a, I don't know. Yeah.
So I think we have yeses from everybody and a question for more detail, but a yes from Joy. Yeah, it's a yes/no question, so I know some nuances are lost in these. Okay, so longer question that may get at some of those nuances. Do you believe SPD has made sufficient progress on reducing the use of excessive force, racially biased policing, and misconduct to justify the end of the federal consent decree, and why or why not? And this is actually a question. So I think we're starting with Bobby this time, if I'm correct. Yep.
Okay. Well, the use of force numbers are actually pretty extraordinary relative to most other law enforcement agencies. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Accountability is important, and so I don't have an issue with us continuing with some consent decree. I mean, we need accountability among our officers, but we also need accountability for individuals within this community. And I think a lot of folks are concerned about that as well. And I think this narrative has been too fixated on this idea that law enforcement is singularly the villain and they're to blame for all of these problems. And I think that's a wrong-headed notion. I think that we need to work intentionally to bridge this trust gap between SPD and the community. I think the vast majority of folks who put on that uniform are genuinely interested and committed to service and want to make this a better place.
A virus spreads rapidly, except stopped. So it's not my role as a civilian to trust the police or build trust. The police has to prove to me I could be trusted. And this is where the African in me would come out and say, in the African proverb, they say a broken chair will definitely embarrass you. So the police is a broken chair, and the only thing we need is we don't need to repair it, we need a whole new chair. And we talk about the OPM, we talk about the Office of Police Accountability. We need to increase the civilian numbers of investigators there and get away with police investigating themselves. We need to, even like a police making $50,000 in overtime, whereby we have people that are barely managing with $25,000. Overtime should be scrapped. I stand on my integrity and say the police is the virus of the society right now. Thank you.
I don't think we need to look any further than what happened on 12th and Pine during our social uprising. It's very clear how police treat our community. Not a proverb, but the way I look at it, it's not bad apples, it's a bad barrel. What I'm proposing is we build our own public safety academy. We use that to stand up a third leg of unarmed, no badge, civilian responders in the mass, the 600 that were supposedly short, and we control all of our public safety from that facility to how do call takers respond, how are calls dispatched, who goes to calls, how do we de-escalate, all the training tip to tail of our public safety and efficient utilization of our resources and all of our personnel so that we send the most equitable response to any type of situation. So we absolutely have to completely rebuild the barrel of how we deal with public safety in the city.
So this is part of my 7-point platform. Most of our cops and fire people do not come from King County. They come from Snohomish County and Pierce County. They are generational fire people or police people, and that is the problem. We need to encourage the local youth from Seattle to join police. 3 people or 5 people will not change the culture, 500 will. We want our local people in there, and we want that funding coming back here. Because a 2-year police officer makes $97K before overtime. Why are we sending that money outside of Seattle? We need them in there. If we hire local youth, we get more jobs, and we can use I-135 to house them here, and then we can have local policing because they know their friends. They're not going to take out the guns the first thing when they want. The second thing we need to do is basically have local community officers, and that could be a retired person. The job of this person is to have the major non-violent issues. Sorry, I'm being hushed.
Let me say this, because I think it's a little different when you hear a black person speak. I don't speak for the black community, and we're not a monolith. So I just wanted to let you know that's my perspective. First thing is, number one, I've personally lost 4 different people in our community to gun violence. One of them being my brother-in-law, who just got shot in the head 3 weeks ago. And so when I'm thinking about those things about safety, and I'm listening to our community, and I'm talking to people in the South End, Rainier Beach, just at my parents' house, there was 30 rounds gone off, people were getting shot. People want some sense of safety. And so when you think about safety in this holistic approach, right? Food access decreases things going on in community by 30%, creates a safe environment. Social workers, funding social workers, connecting people to lifelines. Also, you have to have some type of baseline level of fire, police, and EMT that can be able to respond to certain situations that happen in our city. And then the last and not least, people that are experiencing sexual assault, it's not a priority 1 call, and so I think a detective needs to be responded to those, and that's why I said unarmed, that question about unarmed community policing. Thank you.
It's not It's not an opinion. There is a federal judge who is overseeing our police department, and he has declared that our police department is not adequately reformed to come out from underneath the consent decree, and that is very clear and obvious. And the racial disproportionality in how use of force it plays out in our city. And so we know a couple of things. We know that 20 to 40% of all calls that come into 911 are about mental or behavioral health. There is no reason why a police officer needs to be responding to those calls. And so we need to create a civilian co-responder model based in public and humane health immediately. We need to have more accountability through our police department, through civilian oversight. We need to have de-escalation, trauma-informed care, and other kinds of reform so that we can recruit good police officers. We need to have civilian oversight. We need to have data transparency. There are a lot of known things that we need to be doing to be having a truly safe society, which can only be built through a holistic whole of government approach.
I think the whole system needs to be redone and reworked, and we need someone to innovate it. My plan is to have a 311, a 611, and the 911, and to have separate departments that can have checks and balances between those departments. And it gives the autonomy of the citizens of Seattle to decide who will show up at what incident. And I think we need to actually take some of the money that is going to these 1,400 more cops that Bruce Harrell wants to put into this SPD and hire medical professionals to come in via 611 to intervene when someone's having a mental health crisis. Right now, as it stands, when someone calls 911, the operator is going to decide if we're going to pair that person with a volunteer for community engagement and a cop. And if they hear screaming through the phone, how are they going to get a good sense of that context? And the fact that it's a volunteer. We should be paying people union labor wages for their time and bringing them out to help make our community safer. And I think the police themselves also want to have a more specific job description instead of being a catch-all for society.
As someone who's worked in the criminal justice system, we have a criminal justice problem. The criminal justice system is not a safety net. And I gotta like watch myself. I don't want to come unglued a little bit because it's just, I've been too close to this for too long. The criminal justice system is not a safety net. And if we want to have public safety conversations, the answer is not let's hire more cops. Cops respond, cops abuse their power if they go unchecked, and they have been in the city for far too long. Admittedly, I've been in Seattle for 10 years almost, and I'm still getting caught up on the harms that have been done to this city at the hands of law enforcement. But we need solutions outside of let's just hire more guns and badges to respond to things. If you want to end gun violence in this town, get the fucking guns off the street. I say that as a veteran. I'm tired of it. That's my time.
All right, so we're going to have another lightning round, and this is going to be about police accountability and the contract. So first question, yes or no, did you attend the protests at the Seattle Police Department East Precinct in June 2020? Okay. And the no's I'm seeing are Rye, Joy, Andrew, and, oh, sorry, nope, strike that, Bobby, and
I was watching them from my home.
Okay, great. Next question. Do you believe the Seattle Police Department used excessive force against protesters during those protests? Okay, everybody is saying yes. Do you support Washington state legislation to end qualified immunity for police officers? Okay, saying yeses except for Bobby says no. And last one, unlike most other cities, the current Seattle police contract requires a higher, clear, and convincing standard of proof for the most serious types of officer misconduct charges, instead of the more common preponderance of evidence. Will you require the new contract to use preponderance of evidence as a standard of proof for all misconduct cases? Oh, I see. Is that a waffle down there? Are you ignoring my rules? Okay. I'm seeing a waffle from Bobby and a yes from everybody else. This is going to be another 1-minute question about the police contract. The next council must pass a police contract. given that 80% of officers voted against the last contract offered to them that included strong accountability measures, and by the same margin elected an even more conservative president to represent them in negotiations for the new contract, what steps will you take to actually achieve reform in this process?
As I said earlier on, we need to build and make the accountability stronger. As they push back, I push back. I think we need more, on the OPA side, we need more civilian investigators, more than we need police investigators. On the transparency and accountability, we need to be able to hold them. We need clauses in their contracts that makes civilian reporters' investigation faster, transparent, and more involved with the civilians. And also, we have the power, not them. When we come together unified, we, the people, have the power. We've seen what the people's voices have done, like last week in City Hall. So the idea that they have the power is nothing but an illusion. Thanks.
We have to build our own public safety academy. Other cities have done this. We used to have one. And if we build our own academy and own the education, own the training, I fundamentally believe there will be more participation within community and more fellowship within community. It will boost our culture, and we will have a higher adoptance to an appropriate contract that has appropriate accountability. Andrew's absolutely right. We have to stand up, we have to show out, and have to demonstrate that this is what this city wants. And it really does start with us, but it has to go further in building that academy. I even have the support of now former East Precinct captain of building this academy, because it will be fundamentally transformative to our public safety models and police contracts.
I see that as an opportunity. If they want to go, let's build that academy, and let's hire the local people and change the police, because the local people will change the police. And that's what we need. And we want to make sure that we hiring equal opportunity from all historically excluded minorities, so that everybody participates and everybody changes the world, at least in Seattle.
Oh, okay, that's what we were doing. Gotcha. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
It's, how will you actually achieve reform in the next police contract?
Got to be willing to walk away. That's the key to any good negotiation, is that it's voluntary. I'm not, as the would-be city council member, I'm not bound to having to strike a deal here. And I think SPOG believes that they can run any deal they want, and we're going to be bound to it regardless. And I think it starts with, we'll walk away if we need to. We'll figure out something else. This thin blue line mentality ain't going to fly here.
The Power of No. It's a good book. Yeah, I think this needs to be done in a transparent way and in partnership with the people it hurts most, right? The people that were harmed during the Black Lives Matter protests, the BIPOC community in the Central District, the queer community in Cap Hill. I think we all need to do it in a forum that is public in nature and discuss the tenets of that contract, because I don't want to see anything happening behind closed doors back in Seattle again. So I think that's how we're going to be able to take back power as community in terms of negotiating this contract and making sure that we elect people on the city council that will not just simply start this new war on health, whatever that is, and this war on neo-war on drugs. So that's what I think we need to do. We need to create community around it so that we are centering the needs of the people ahead of the police.
Yeah, I was there during the CHOP protests and had the police department at that time spray tear gas straight into my face. And so had to have milk poured into my eyes right there in the street. And so I have some lived experience in terms of how that went down. And I agree with what's been said up here, which is that the police work for us. And that means that we get a contract that works for us, and we don't ratify a contract unless it works for us. And that means co-responder models, that means civilian oversight, that means less things are illegal in the first place, that means a preponderance of evidence gets changed, that means a whole lot of things that have been talked about and discussed in our city for a very long time. And so it's up to us to, I guess I'll borrow a phrase from them, hold the line.
It's the ability to walk away from a contract if it doesn't meet the needs of our community, number one. Number two, it's ensuring that the historically excluded communities that have not been amplified at City Hall, we're really good at having this close proximity to Blackness, but not touching it and feeling it, and really going in and connecting with communities to amplify their voices. And so what I'm hearing from communities, I'm talking to them every day, I live it, I see it, I breathe it. My job is to make sure that those communities have direct contact and connection with this contract, and also they give their feedback into what they would like to see from their communities. Talking to folks in Rainier Beach, they want to see in a contract where a police officer is a requirement to come to certain meetings that they're hosting as a community. They're not just invited, like they're actually required to come into those communities to create some type of relationship with folks. We also need to stand up our community policing piece as well. So those are the things that I'm thinking about.
You know what makes it really hard to negotiate when you walk to the table with someone that you vilify consistently, constantly, and just reduce as the racist, this, the that. It's too simple-minded. And like right here in this place, obviously it's easy and popular to say this, to tell this narrative. But like, it's not just law enforcement who's to blame for the problems in the city. It's not law enforcement who's, doing all of the killing. That is just a false narrative. You're far more likely to be killed as a pedestrian than you are by law enforcement. We have to have honest and healthy dialogue and conversation, and can't be engaging in this type of histrionic thinking if we're going to make actual progress. We have to be able to try and reach across this line. And I wasn't at the Capitol Hill block, those protests, because you know what? I've actually been doing the work for 12 years. I've been serving people of color, poor individuals, every day, all of the time.
All right, and so our final lightning round for the evening is going to be about drug use and possession. Actually, I lied. We're gonna have a an audience submitted little lightning round after this one, but these are the prepared questions. Do you believe that criminal charges, prosecution, and incarceration are successful strategies to ensure that people with substance use disorder get medical treatment? Okay. So everybody but Bobby is saying no, and I hear him saying can be. Do you support legislation that was the legislation that failed last week, authorizing Republican City Attorney Ann Davison to prosecute gross misdemeanor public drug use and drug possession in Seattle? Okay, I'm seeing no's and a yes from Bobby. And should the city establish safe consumption sites for drug use? Which is pick whatever's closer to your point of view.
I'm wobbling.
All right. Okay, and then Bobby says yes, and Joy is wobbling. Yeah. Bobby says no, and everybody else says yes. Sorry, and Joy is waffle. All right, I am actually going to do another lightning round. I really want to get to audience questions because there were some great ones, so let's just start with another little lightning round on some of these. Do you support the deployment of hostile architecture, or such as the fencing off of public land, parks, things like that, to prevent, basically homeless people from sleeping there or other acts by the public? Okay. Everybody says no. How did you vote on Compassion Seattle, Charter Amendment 29? How would you have voted, sorry, on Charter Amendment 29? The Compassion, yeah, sure. Well, let's just say, how would you have voted if it had come up for a vote? This was the charter amendment that would. Boy, I'm gonna struggle to summarize it because, as Rai said, time is an illusion, and I don't remember the exact details. But it was essentially seen as right as a sweeps bill.
I don't know enough about
Okay. All right, so we're getting a mix there, and I apologize that I can't explain that in detail, but we'll move on since that is a past issue. So I'm going to summarize this one as there were a lot of renter complaints filed at SDCI, and it's very rare for fines to be issued in response to renter complaints. Seattle has supported workers by creating the Office of Labor Standards. If elected, can you commit to protecting Seattle's 400,000 renters by creating an Office of Renter Rights Standards? Okay. People are saying yes to that one. And do you support creating a super block in the Pike Pine corridor?
Let's go, baby.
I mean, yeah, I support it.
What is the question again?
Do you support creating a super block in the Pike Pine corridor?
Can it happen?
It's a development strategy that involves creating a pedestrian area inside housing. Okay. And I'm seeing a lot of yeses on that. Okay, so we're going to go to 1 minute answer questions, and these are going to be on all different topics. What are the ways in which you have been a part of the communities you are looking to represent? And are there any issues that you have been a part of organizing on in your community or neighborhood?
Oh, I'll go first. But before I start, I want to say, please don't use my blackness as a platform for your white savior ideology. I fight the fight every day, just putting that out there. So I am the Seattle LGBTQ co-chair, and I have done a lot of work around LGBTQ rights here in Seattle. But also, I was able to use my platform to get 21 people released from detention in Ghana. And also as an HIV person, I've brought over 1 million into HIV care for the Black community, people living with HIV. On the immigrant community, I brought over $300,000 last year to give the undocumented Africans here in Washington State who did not qualify for the COVID relief program due to their documents. So I think I walk the walk and I fight the fight for the people I want to represent. Thank you.
My community involvement and civic action began with cannabis. I founded and chaired several organizations to bring forth medical protections for medical patients, legislation for it, legalization, up and down. Most notably and most specifically within these communities that we all live within, I am the president of the Jackson Place Community Council, Central Area Neighborhood District Council. I'm the first vice chair of the 37th LD that is helping put on this wonderful event here tonight. Independently, I've worked building a coalition for safety at 23rd and Jackson, including King County Council Member Gurmai, City Council offices, King County Metro, and we are very, very grateful to say that we've helped bring in community passageways as well as Black Coffee Northwest into the historic vacated Starbucks at 23rd and Jackson. So I've been working hard for our community for a long time and can't wait to do it for our entire community. Thank you.
I was part of the South Asian LGBT group when we were fighting for marriage equality way back in 2005 to 6. There was a court case going up to the Washington Supreme Court, which we unfortunately lost in 2006. And one of the founders of that group, the couple founders, were part of that case. I have been on my condo board served on my condo board for the past 5 years. Now I see, and during that, I lose half the battles. The point is to put your ideas forward, but make whatever decisions are made, implement them to the benefit of the constituents. I see Seattle City Council as a very, very, very large condo board with much more complex constituents. And I think doing the role that I am doing now helps me do that.
Yeah, check 1, 2. One thing is I'm probably most proud of is the work that we've been doing with food accessibility and food sovereignty and food justice all across the state of Washington, but specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities that were just completely disconnected from food resources during the pandemic. And so was able to go ahead and connect. I'm thinking about like one of my whys, right? Think about the why, the grandmother who turned her entire apartment into a food bank for her apartment complex. Like those were the people that we were serving, connecting with, making sure they got to resources. And second, my family has a cannabis farm. There's only 2 Black cannabis farms in the entire state. We have been using our platform to make sure that the 37% tax dollars, which is $1 billion, half of it goes to healthcare, the other half goes to different services, that those funds get reinvested to communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And that's all in the South End, Tacoma, Hilltop, South Seattle, and some areas in the Central District. Thank you.
Yeah, like I'm full on about it. I used to run the neighborhood organization for the neighborhood that I live in. Like that was about bringing people together in our community in First Hill to fight for the things that we needed, which was more affordable housing, better parks and public open space, like safer streets and crosswalks, redesigning parks, installing literally dozens of pieces of public art throughout my neighborhood. I'm a transit rider. My family doesn't have a car, and I ran a pro-transit organization where I built a coalition of people all across the state of Washington to deliver massively important things like $5.2 billion worth of investment in multimodal transportation, making transit free for every young person in Washington 19 and under for the next 16 years, like fighting against transit cuts all across Tri-Cities, like everything, the communities that I represent. I'm on the board of Bellwether Housing. I'm on the board of the Freeway Park Association. Like I care very, very, very deeply about my community, and I have committed my life to public service and making it better.
Yeah, if elected, I'd be the first non-binary trans person on the Seattle City Council, which is pretty cool and crazy, considering the nation's perceptive of our community. I'm going to spend less talking about what I have done and more focused on the now. If you want to read up on my climate activism or volunteerism, check out the website. But my union, actually, SAG-AFTRA, needs your help, and I see some union leaders in this room. We are working on a sit-in at the next Seattle Film Commission meeting on June 26th at 9:30 in the morning at City Hall to demand that they write a letter supporting the WGA right to strike that's happening over the last month and a half. So if you want to see me in action, join me at that date, and we will do a sit-in together.
That was classy. I've been involved in the 43rd Den since 2018, been a delegate to the state convention in 2020, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on, party activity. The thing I'm most proud of and the thing that I like to share, in 2020, I graduated from law school along with about 700 other people looking to be licensed to practice law in the state of Washington. The bar did not have a plan or how to administer a standardized test in the midst of a global health pandemic. Weird, right? Well, we successfully organized and got the Supreme Court to waive the administration of that exam for us for the first time in over 50 years since it was adopted as a standardized way to license lawyers. And this is important because that work has continued on. And next month, we will be proposing to the court an alternative pathway to licensure, which will ensure that more people who look like me can go into the practice of law, lowering the barriers to access to justice for people across the state of Washington.
Well, like Efren, I graduated from law school at Seattle University 10 years earlier. I've stayed connected to that community. I like to be involved in terms of the moot court programming. It's important in terms of inspiring and encouraging young lawyers. I'm really involved in the they call it the Yexler Cleanup. It's just a local community organization that we go out through various sort of parks and neighborhoods and do trash pickup and try and contribute. And that's been a lot of what my campaign's been about doing. Not out there asking folks for money, out there trying to serve the district. And that's what I'm looking to do down the line, if elected as well. Also, I should note in terms of a further organization, so I connected with NAMI. So for those of you who don't know, that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I've been pretty heavily involved with them for about the last 7 years. I run my own support group for those who, like myself, suffer from mental illness. And that's been really important work for me, fighting the stigma, and it's an important community. Cheers.
All right.
Did everybody get to go? Okay, great. No, because we've got to keep to time. But y'all are doing great on keeping it to 1 minute. So another question from the audience: what is the best way to eliminate racist policing? We'll start with Alex Cooley.
Sound like a broken record here, but if we build our own public safety academy and we actually own all the education tip to tail of who is involved in our public safety mechanism, I believe that it is our first and foremost best way to do that. Within that police academy, we can make sure to have a direct reflection of communities participate within our public safety, so we have an extremely diverse set of voices who are representing our public safety within our communities and helping to build community together, improving our culture, and pushing down and actively fighting against racism every day.
Again, hire locally, maybe with the academy. Hire local people, black, white, gay, straight, trans. If you see trans people in the police, there'll be less violence against them. Everybody needs to be part of it. We need to hire locally instead of hiring police people from Pierce and Snohomish County. That's what will make the change.
Go. Okay. I would like to see more women officers. I think that's huge. The other thing is the whole entire institutional structure of policing stems from racist past, right? And so we know that, we understand that, but I would also like to see police officers serve the communities in which they live in, which they're from. That could be able to dismantle some of the systemic racism pieces that we have, and also more officer training. I know we have a Before the Badge program, but I think it's not just before the badge, it's consistent training with biases that an officer might have when they interact with youth and engage with people as well. So it's consistent training.
Yeah, in addition to the things that I mentioned earlier, which is about accountability, culture change, and reform, transparency, and community involvement, one of the things we need to do is make less things crimes. I was proud to build the coalition that was fighting to repeal jaywalking laws, which is a pretextual historical anomaly by which police officers are able to disproportionately stop black men and homeless people. I was happy to stand and fight with the ACLU in trying to remove armed police officers from traffic stops. You shouldn't have to have an interaction with a police officer over a broken tail light or a registration. So there's a lot of things that we can be doing to reduce the number of interactions between police officers and civilians so that we can have less discretion and less harm.
I think as a white person, it's about doing the internal work of trying to be as anti-racist as possible and not taking up space in a room and creating space for these conversations to happen. My friends of color tend to ask me to be there and support, but not to take up space in those rooms. And so I think it's about being as anti-racist as possible in that work. And that is difficult within a system of white supremacy that we live in every day, or transphobia for that matter. So I think it's about white people, get the fuck out of the way, and let's actually listen to the people that this is affecting.
The question was, what's the best idea to eliminate racism in policing?
Yeah, basically, what would you do to eliminate racist policing?
I don't know if we can. Not in its current configuration. I don't want to pretend like I've got an answer for what that other configuration can and should look like, but I don't know if it can. There's a lot of people that are, I would say if you hire more people that look like me or look like that person over there, then that'll fix the problem, and yet it doesn't. And that is painful for me to say as someone who has been a participant in the criminal justice system. It's painful for me to say as a black man standing before you, because I want to believe that we can fix it, but I don't know if we can.
I promise you that this framing is part of the problem, right?
when you go about it and it says, how do we make police less racist, as opposed to saying, how do we make police more compassionate? How do we, right? It matters. It matters the way we have this conversation. And I assure you that these narratives are not productive. It's not helpful. It does not give you the opportunity to engage across the table and have meaningful, healthy conversation. It does not have an honest recognition for what it's like to do that work. It is not being, we're just not being honest about that, about how difficult this work can be. I mean, I've watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of body cam footage, and what I have not seen is just an insane amount of violent and racist cops. Great.
Okay, let's let folks answer the questions and move on. Andrew, you're up.
As a black queer person and as an immigrant, there are certain things I can pretend not to be, but I cannot pretend not to be black. The first thing people see is my blackness. And the idea that we can change a system that was created on racism to attack black people in the South, on racism to attack Chinese Americans in the West Coast, on racism to attack Native Americans in the Midwest. For centuries, they've been who they are. We cannot change. I'm sorry, but there's no solution but to do something means having a different option and showing them who's boss in doing that. Thank you.
Are we, I think we are very close to being out of time. Do we have time for a few more little lightning rounds? Okay, I just want to get to some of, okay, I'm hearing groans, at least one groan, but I'm just gonna zip through some of these because there are a lot of questions that I got that I was not able to quite get to. Okay, do you support impact fees on single family homes? Yeah, so impact fees for development, impact fees for the impact of development, but this question is about single-family homes. Okay, this seems to be a confusing question, so I can move on, but it is an interesting question. So if people want to respond, okay, Alex is saying no. I'm seeing a couple of yeses. I don't understand. And okay, and this is a y'all. I'm reading the questions. I didn't write them. Okay, do you support lot splitting, which is permitting a property owner to divide a parcel into multiple lots as small as 1,500 square feet to increase housing supply? Okay. Seeing mostly yeses. Okay, all yeses. Okay, let's see. Do you support moving traffic safety enforcement to lower cost unarmed resources such as within the Seattle Department of Transportation? And this is out of the police department.
Traffic enforcement or parking?
Traffic safety enforcement.
Traffic safety.
So let's say moving violations, that sort of thing.
Like a DUI?
Again, I'm just reading the questions, so I don't want to impart my own assumptions on the questions.
Maybe it depends.
Okay. There's a question about the Brady List, which I hope everybody is familiar with. The King County prosecutor has placed several active SPD officers on a list indicating that they can't be relied on to testify in court because of a history of lying or misconduct. This is known as the Brady List. Will you support a requirement in the new police contract to terminate any officer who is on the Brady List? Okay. All right, seeing yeses and kind of a waffle to yes from Bobby. And let's do one more. Let's see. Should the officers who abandoned the East Precinct and stopped responding to calls for service in the surrounding area be charged with dereliction of duty?
I don't know. I'd have to read about it more.
All right. All right, that is all the questions we have time for. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question, but I would say watch another forum, ask the candidates after this event, and want to thank all of our candidates, as well as the 37th, the 43rd, KEXP, and Tech for Housing, our sponsors for this event tonight, and thank you all in the audience for being here.